And welcome to another edition of Soul Tree Radio on the Raw. My name's Anthony McLean. Hope you had a good day. We are getting started with our weekly show. We'll be joined by Michael Lewis Ingram and others in just a few. And this is that time of the year where if you're a college basketball fan and you're not able to get excited this time of the year where all the tournaments are going on, you probably never will be able to get excited again. This is the time of the year where all college basketball fans live and die for, with the conference tournaments, and then of course the big dance starting on Tuesday night with the play-in games, and then the the tournament begins in full on Thursday. That'll be the men. The women will also have their play-in games as well. And this, I believe, is either the first or second year where both the men's and women's pairings are going to come out on Sunday. What usually happens is that the men's pairings usually come out on Sunday, and then the women come out on Monday. But they're both going to be done on the same night. And again, a lot of stuff going on. Of course, you got the free agency frenzy as well in the NFL between trades and what have you. Now, the last time we talked, um, there were still a lot of prominent names out there, major trades. I guess one of the biggest moves was seeing Myles Garrett re-signed with the Cleveland Browns. He got the highest contract for a non quarterback in the league, and re-upping with the Cleveland Browns. And rumor has it now that they are talking with Russell Wilson as a possible replacement coming in. Russell is also still debating whether he's going to come back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also, there's talk of a there's also talk that they're going after Aaron Rodgers as well. And again, since we last talked, Justin Fields signed with the New York Jets, so he's going to be given an opportunity to start. We've seen Geno Smith be traded by the Seattle Seahawks to the Las Vegas Raiders. I like the trade. I think the fact that he's going to be playing with his former coach Pete Carroll, I think that's going to wind up being a great move for both, as well as we bring in the host of Sultry Radio in the Raw, Mr. Michael Lewis Ingram. And how are you? So I was as I was intro, and I was talking about the Geno Smith trade
Ah,
to the Las Vegas Raiders. I really liked the trade. The Raiders, Seahawks, wind up getting a third round pick, and they in turn signed Sam Darnold.
right.
Good luck with that.
Yeah,
In regard to that, and also Justin Fields signing with the Jets. I like that as well, depending on seeing how the rest of that goes. And just to piggyback on Gino with the Raiders, um, the fact that he's already probably got a couple more weapons in Vegas, the fact that they also re-upped with Max Crosby. Now, look, Kansas City is still the team to beat in not only just the West, but
mhm,
in the AFC.
no
But
doubt.
it'll be interesting to see what happens between the Raiders and Denver. Of course, Denver, one of the wild cards. It wouldn't surprise me if you get three teams coming out of the West this year.
Well, you know what's interesting about this? They were complaining. I mean, the Seahawks were about Geno and his money. Geno is not
Yeah,
getting quarterback money as if you were talking about serious coin. He was making somewhere between 25 and 30 million a year. And that's not quite starter money for the top quarterbacks. And Geno got double digit wins out of a team that didn't even make the playoffs. He's a lot better than always fought. And I appreciate the fact that they've tried to put him down for years because he wasn't what he was supposed to be. It was, he came out of us with good shape.
Having some audio, having some audio problems.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
gonna mute Reggie for the time being. But yeah, go ahead, Mike. Sorry about that.
Well, so anyway, like I was saying, Gino, he managed to revive his career and he made the All Pro, made it twice, as a matter of fact. And he shut everybody up about whether or not he could do the job. But he was doomed to fail when the Jets drafted him because the Jets really had no plan B. They had no backup, nothing. And to try to survive the vicious press that's in New York, they savaged this guy. And you know, the Jets, their fan base isn't conducive to being supportive unless you're of a certain hue. And it's gonna be interesting to see what they do with Justin Fields because Justin has all the same components as Gino, maybe a little more using his legs than Gino was. But
Right. Absolutely.
long and short with Gino, I'm happy for him. He can go downfield with the best of them, and I hope that he manages to take the best of his advantage with the Raiders.
You know, this is this. You know, even though Al Davis has left this worldly world for a while, this is like an old school Raiders pickup in a sense where they get somebody that can that you know the Raiders love their vertical game, and they haven't basically since and I was going to say since Derek Carr was in town, and even Derek wasn't really a deep threat, but this is the first deep threat that they've had like this in a while. You know, they had Garoppolo there, but Garoppolo can't stay upright for more than 5 or 6 games at a time. And again,
like,
he doesn't have that deep arm.
It was like they said when they got Darryl LaMonica. We got LaMonica to throw long. We got Geno Smith to throw long. Both of these guys can do the same things. And Geno, like LaMonica, understood that football is a matchup game. You got the right matchups. I'm going downfield. My man can beat your man. I'm not even worried about it. Let's go. And that's the kind of mentality you need for a quarterback. Any quarterback.
Yeah, and Seattle was just having to purge. They released Lockett and they let DK Metcalf sign with the Steelers. So whoever the Steelers do come back with for quarterback, they're going to have at least a couple of targets if they can. Their other wide receiver, whose name escapes me right now, but has had so many off the field, on the field problems. If he's Pickett, if he's able to keep it in the straight and narrow, whoever they bring in at quarterback's going to have some pretty decent receivers to deal with. So what's been real intriguing to me has been some of the quote unquote lesser moves. You see the Commanders picking up Jeremy Tunzel from the from the Texans, so that gives a little bit more, gives another dominant blocker for Mr. Daniels. Couple of other I saw Lamar Hamlin re-upped with the Bills, and they also signed Joey Bosa, which was a little bit of a surprise because the Chargers basically let him go to try and bring him back on the cheap, but give the Bills their due. They jumped on it. Now they still got to get a running back, as far as I'm concerned, before I take them seriously. And the Chiefs let go one of their offensive linemen. So you got to feel that this is just sort of the residual backlash for the Super Bowl, with Patrick Mahomes basically being mugged mugged in Mardi Gras on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, I would say so. But the Bills, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm just doing a Negro dominance here for argument's sake, the Bills aren't going to go anywhere until Josh Allen is exposed for the fraud that he is. He really is nothing more than Carson Wentz 2.0. And Carson Wentz wasn't shit when he came into the league. He's got a strong arm. Yeah, he can run a little bit. Yeah. But he was voted MVP. MVP of what? He didn't win. As a matter of fact, one of the writers.
He was anointed MVP. I think that's more of more than anything else as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, go ahead.
One of the writers, Jim Miller, who, if you remember, he was a backup quarterback for the Steelers. He came out of Michigan State.
Yeah, Steelers and the Bears. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he votes Lamar Jackson first team All-Pro. And then he votes him fourth in the MVP voting. I mean, as Reggie would say, what in the ham sandwich is going on here? It's bullshit. We're talking about people who have the power to say, this person can do this and this person can't do this. And this is why. No real reason as to why. It's just more conjecture and politics. And it's like it takes away from the reason why you're supposed to vote in the first place. If it's MVP, absolutely. Why is this person indispensable? What does he do or doesn't do that makes him the most important person on the team? The reason why they win or lose. They don't answer that question. It's a fucking popularity contest. And now that he got an extension, he's making roughly $66 million a year. So he's the most expensive. Not that he's the most worth it, but he's the most expensive. And he's going to be overpriced for the next 5 years because the Bills aren't winning anything as long as he's quarterback.
Yeah, I think the thing with them is they probably, barring something crazy, they probably are going to repeat as AFC East champs. But until they can prove that they can beat the King of the Hill in Kansas City, they're gonna, they're always gonna be second-class citizens as far as I'm concerned. As we bring in Reggie Howe formerly from WCLM Radio. And Reg, we were just talking about some of the signings, some of the trades and what have you that's going on so far in the NFL. You got to give them, you got to give the devil its due. Even during the off season, they still are able to monopolize the sports news. They're still able to monopolize the sports news cycle, even with March Madness and baseball around the corner, and the NBA, NHL gearing up toward the playoffs. So, what say you, Reg, from beautiful downtown Richmond, Virginia?
The home of the Confederacy. Ain't nothing beautiful about this.
You said it, not me.
It's the fact. Hey, on the brochures when you come down here, the historical Confederate statues, they're gone. Those darn Yankees, they took our statues down. That's their promotional pitch on Miami Avenue. But gentlemen, the thing that really amazed me, and forgive me, I just got off the road, so I'm multitasking right now, and I apologize for the background.
No problem.
What really amazed me is that they do this as far as making sure that Josh Allen was going to be the bridesmaid. They're going to say, look, we know you can't beat Patrick Mahomes, and we tired of that individual from Baltimore getting this. We're not going to make sure he gets it 3 times in a row. We're going to do everything we can to undervalue, underestimate, and marginalize Lamar Jackson. Because we all know he should have got all the numbers was there. They go by matrix, they go by numbers that I call the geek numbers, only when it supports their argument. But when it doesn't support their argument,
like I said, he got to. Like I was telling Michael, he was anointed MVP. He was not MVP on this. It's and this is a long time ago, a friend of mine in the media he always said, take these awards with a grain of salt because, especially, so many of these awards now it's a popularity contest.
Yeah.
And we always hear this phrase in the NBA. Well, it's his time to win it, even though
Yeah.
they probably a lot of times, depending on the player, when they do get MVP, it's usually not the best season that they've had in their career. There are guys that have won MVP that probably had better seasons when they were non MVPs, but
Exactly.
this whole pecking order, and
Yeah.
it just gets so old, and now their excuses. Well, these guys, and there's a lot of with a lot of these contracts, there are incentive clauses in the sense where, say you win MVP or finish in the top 5, you may get a bonus or what have you, and they'll not vote for a guy for MVP and Hall of Fame, but that's another 2-hour conversation in and of itself, where they'll literally try to spike these guys just so just for silly dishes. I mean, again, how do you vote Lamar Jackson first team All Pro quarterback and not vote him as MVP? Just explain that. If you can explain that to me with a straight face, maybe I'll listen to you.
You got a hidden agenda, but does Dr. Evil say there's some Dick Dastardly stuff going on? So Dr. Evil
No
is going
doubt. No doubt. I
Yeah,
tell you what they do.
Even Dick Dastardly would be envious of the kind of stuff that's going on there.
Yeah,
There's no
Crazy.
doubt about
yes.
that. Mhm.
Go ahead, Mike.
Mike, you had we're talking football, but I wanted to get into baseball. I know you had mentioned earlier today where one of the rule changes coming into the Major League Baseball season this year, and believe it or not, the season actually starts over in Japan on early Tuesday morning. Over in Japan with the Dodgers taking on the Cubs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Now, hey, look, money and MLB starting the season overseas. It's a reality, and the funny thing is, this is the second straight year for the Dodgers starting overseas. Of course, now they're coming in there with being the defending world champions. But again, to harp on one of the things that's happening now. We've seen the replay. We've seen replay take over now. We've seen basically the designated runner in extra innings, and to coin Peter Griffin's phrase, that really grinds my gears. But that's another thing. But now batters are now going to be allowed to appeal strike calls.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
MLB stands for money leaving the batter's box, because you've got baseball is no longer a sport that they will bet. ESPN decided that they would not carry baseball anymore. They're not saying something. You got 4 major sports, and all of a sudden, baseball is cutting itself off. I mean, they're not doing it because they're crying broke. They're doing it because the process is convoluted. I still to this day don't know how you bet on baseball. If you were betting Mets versus Yankees, and the total is say 7, I'm assuming that they can't combine and make more than 7 runs. And if you have a certain pitcher, the number gets lowered. So if it's Garrett Cole versus Scherzer, that number might go down to 5.5, because if it's a 6 run, then you lose your bet. But it sounds like the process is so complicated that people don't fucking care about betting on baseball. Besides, why bother when you can make money more easily on basketball or football?
It's funny you should say that. I saw the story moved on the wire earlier today where they're expecting for just for the men's tournament this year, they're expecting bets in upwards to 358 billion.
Wow.
That's B billions, little boys and girls.
Damn.
That's your letter for the day, B.
Cash.
In regard to that, and the crazy thing, Mike, I think that's a low. I think that's a low estimate, to be quite honest.
It might be. We know that the Super Bowl and March Madness are the big paydays for the gambling world. And it's no doubt about it, the money gets collected around the time that these teams are going into the Final Four, into the tournament. But now that the gambling thing has been declawed, so to speak, the amount of money that's being recorded for betting is off the charts. I mean, it's 150 billion for football alone. So if they're up to 350 plus billion in basketball, college basketball, yet, you don't know what the hell's going to happen.
Yeah, and again, I still enjoy the tournament. It's a little jaded now to me, because now they've basically made it all about the big schools. After seeing George Mason and VCU and Butler and Loyola make these runs, it's almost like they said, "Okay, enough of this. No more Cinderellas. This is going to be top heavy."
Yes.
Even with the 4 playing games. And actually, I saw a story earlier this week. I don't know how true it is, but they're actually thinking about adding more teams to the tournament. And I'm like, it's 68 now.
More,
How? I mean,
more money, more money. I can see them add more teams to the tournament. But what I'm interested in is what they'll do to the women's tournament. Last year, the women's tournament got big exposure, and now they've been talking about changing the format into 4 10-minute quarters as opposed to 2 20-minute halves. Now, I don't know what kind of change that will do.
they've already started that now. That they're doing that now in the women's game. It doesn't take too much away, at least on the surface. But I'm like you. I'm a sort of a traditionalist. Just do the 2 20-minute half.
Yes.
Have that continuity.
But the females are definitely getting it because the exposure from last year and up to this year, it's made the women's game probably a lot more balanced than we would have expected it to be. It's not like it's almost every Sunday, Saturday, whatever day, one women's team can beat another. You got a handful of women's teams that are stepping up and standing out. So now every time South Carolina or UConn or UCLA or Notre Dame plays, people are paying attention. And it's good for the game overall, but it's like, what's going to happen next? The next big college scandal has got to be women's basketball. Somehow, somebody's going to take a dive or take some dollars in the women's tournament.
Well, what's interesting to me is now there's more opportunities for upsets in the women's game. Plus,
Yeah.
I just feel just me personally, I just think the games. I rather if put a gun to my head, I would much rather watch a good women's tournament game than a good men's game personally. And the thing also is that on the court, we've seen more instances of a 1 beating a 16. I know it's happened at least 4 or 5 times in the tournament, and you get a lot of upsets, even with the fact that they still play a lot of these first round games in places like South Carolina, like Tennessee, like UConn, Notre Dame, Iowa State, Iowa. They still depend on having these first round games being played in the traditional powers. And I get it, because the women, even though the women's revenue has gotten bigger over the years, they still have the need to play a lot of these games at the site at the big time sites. But again, like you said, the last 2 years we've seen a huge resurgence of the women's game. I think the fact that there is, depending on how you look at it, and just like this with both tournaments this year, there really is no, this is the team to beat.
Right.
Even as great as South Carolina has played this year, it wasn't that long ago where the UConn women thumped them real badly.
That's right.
And then ironically, that's South Carolina's last loss, and they've run the table since then. Winning the regular season and the tournament for in the SEC. And Dawn Staley has come out and said that was the turning point of our season when they got beat by UConn.
Yep.
They've used that as an impetus, and it's gonna. I'm interested to see. They're probably gonna get an. If you listen to all the projections and this idiotic bracketology, which is another grind my gears thing as well. But there will be some that will say, well, shouldn't UConn get one because they did beat South Carolina and they again ran the table in the Big East, but the Big East still doesn't get that love that they used to back in the day in regards to the tournament, and more so on the women's side than the men's side, though.
That's ironic. 40 years ago, the Big East brought 3 teams into the Final Four, and the Big East tournament is going on tonight. My brother Patrick Farrar is at there now, and he was talking about the fact that a lot of the young bloods are there, but there's not as much support as there used to be for the tournament. But we know Georgetown and the jackets and wearing their gear and all that other stuff came from there, and it really burst through big time from the Big East was able to give. And this was not a monster tournament in terms of major schools came in. The Big East earned their own niche, and they pushed everybody aside and said, make room, damn it, we ain't here. And that's exactly what they did.
The Big East and UFC are 2 sports where timing was everything. When the Big East began in late 1979, and around about that time, an obscure sports network began by the name of, and it was a perfect storm because they needed programming, and that was one of the first conferences they contract. I mean, basically, the Big East basically gave you Big Monday. That was a staple for the longest time. They started, they recruited nationally, literally from day one. By that second year, they were getting the McDonald's All-Americans and the top recruits and what have you. And again, like you said, it culminated, within 6 years, in 1985, Georgetown, St. John's, and Villanova made the Final Four. And it is so surreal to look at, with all the conference realignment. I mean, basically the ACC has become Big East South in a sense, with Syracuse, Pittsburgh, Virginia Tech, Boston College, and then even some of the others. Rutgers, of course, is in the Big Ten. But I wanted to just throw this out there to you, Mike, to show you just how crazy it's gotten. I was one of the previous show I did earlier this week. I had the UConn good friend of mine, Dama More from the Hartford Courant, who is the beat writer for UConn men. Basically, what's going on now, and again, it's still rumored, but it makes sense when you think about it. UConn is contemplating leaving the Big East for all sports And
Oh,
apparently there's a bidding war between the Big 12 and the ACC.
oh my
And
God.
yeah, so it's so right now it's basically, who's going to come up with the big bucks to bring
Yep.
them. Now, if they make, I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. If I'm UConn, I go to the ACC. If nothing else, it renews some of those old Big East rivalries with the
And raise
teams that
level
are
of
there
competition
now.
again. Yes.
Exactly. And now, regional wise, it's ass backwards because you got Stanford in the ACC. On the women's side, yeah. To show you how crazy it is, to show the Big Ten Women's Championship game this year was USC versus UCLA.
Unbelievable. Big
I
time.
mean, it's yeah, and of course of course the Big Ten, of course, I guess is using that new math because they haven't had 10 teams in there. I don't know. I mean, I can't remember when they did. And it's funny when Penn State joined the Big Ten. I guess it's been like over 20 years now. We
Yeah.
we scoffed at that then, but that was tame compared to what you have now because with the Big 12 now, the Big 12 for the longest time was basically the old Southwest Conference. But once the Texas teams left, now it's college sports jambalaya because you got teams in the East, you got teams in the Eastern time zone, you got teams in the Central, you got I think I forget who's some of the farthest west teams, but I think they have some teams in the Pacific time zone as well. It's look, we all know it's a money grab, but Jesus Christ, it's crazy now.
We have to give credit where credit is due, and while he's convalescent, our heart goes out to our brother Gary Gray because Gary talked
Absolutely.
a long time ago. He said there would be only 3 or 4 super conferences that would dictate college football and college sports. Period. And this is well on its way to falling within that argument. You got the so-called ACC getting schools on the West Coast, East Coast, Mountain Time Zone. It's all over the place, and they don't care. The only thing that matters to them is rank and money, and the amount of emphasis that they spend on a game, especially college football, where one game is like putting all your chips in and hoping that you get lucky because if you lose, you've lost a shitload of money. And you can't even begin to count how high the repercussion of that would be.
See, my lament over the years has always been college sports is regional. USC, UCLA makes sense because of region. Michigan, Ohio State because of territory. Yale, Harvard, Pitt, and Penn State when they used to play each other on a consistent basis. West Virginia and Pitt as well. I mean, the regional rivalries. One of the reasons why the Big East hit so big because Syracuse, Georgetown made sense. UConn, Seton Hall made sense, and we lament about the blow up of the Big East, but to be honest, I think the Pac-12 got it worse. I mean, they literally stripped them. They, used one of your old phrases. They stripped them down to the white meat, in a sense, because they literally none of their traditional teams are there anymore. The fact that USC and UCLA women played for the Big 12 Big 10 championship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's to me, I'm trying not to be the old man in the mountains and not want them painted, but gee whiz, it's ridiculous, man.
Well, NIL opened this up because they couldn't stop being greedy bastards, and they had to find a way to legitimize being greedy bastards. So they said we can't make the excuse that college kids shouldn't make any money. All right, we'll let them make a little bit of money, but a very little bit of money. They weren't expecting NIL to branch out into all these potential revenue streams that would make an eligible student athlete, quote, quote, get paid. And that's exactly what's going on. And they can't really pull the tap off it because there's too much money coming in from gambling.
And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the fact that the gambling is going to the level that it's going is making it difficult for them to have a straight face while they're trying to dismiss all this. We're going to have a tournament in a couple of days where everybody's going to get paid up front. Now, we know it's at least 68 teams and maybe more that are going to get at least 7 figures for getting in. And then they'll get paid on top of that each layer for winning a game. So they get to the final four. And the final four, they're going to share at least $10 million per school to get their little piece of the rock. And if anybody gets any kind of piece of that, it's a lot of money. Even if it's a so-called Cinderella school, they're going to make more money than they've made in years. We saw that with a couple of schools in the tournament. And the possibility of it happening again, well, as long as you got 1 or 2 guys who can play and you got the scoreboard on your side, anything is possible. There's no more major underdogs. You got favorites for sure, but there are no more major underdogs because it's a wide open tournament. Anybody can win.
Yeah. And the thing to me is, and look, I go back and forth. Do I enjoy championship week? Yes, I do. Like I said, I've been watching basketball till my ears and eyes are bleeding. I'm watching the SEC when the SEC quarters tonight. I'll definitely after we're done here, I know I'll probably catch the UConn Villanova game. But my thing is, I don't have a problem for the most part. I don't have a problem with the conference championships. I know for a lot of these conferences, especially the mid majors, this is sort of where they make their money because they know that they're only going to be able to maybe make a handful of money just going into the first round, the Horizon Leagues and all that other stuff. But my thing is, to me, the regular season champ deserves to be automatic, not the tournament championships. To me, if you win the regular season, you should be in. Now, if somebody should bum rush, and invariably you always get maybe 1 or 2 teams that are under 500, but they get hot for 3-4 days and they win the conference tournament and they get fed to the Dukes and the Kansases of the world. So they can do the Heimlich maneuver on them in an opening round game. Now, granted, some of them, they throw them in the play-in games as well. Usually the HBCU schools get automatically thrown into, we've seen instances where the SWAC and MEAC champions literally play each other in one of the play-in games so they can, so they don't whatever. But it's again, it's a double-edged sword because you see all the money. And look, I'm not going to lament them for the kind of money that they make. God bless them. Everybody. We're in a alleged capitalist society, so you're supposed. You're going to be able to make your money. But see, my problem is they'll do all this finagling with the conferences, but they'll tell you that NIL is the devil.
That's exactly right. See, the hypocrisy is what pisses me off. If they would have just be greedy bastards and accept the money and the premise of making the money, we wouldn't have an argument with that. It would be, well, who's going to do what to whom? It'll be the games. But because of the money, it changes the whole entire spectrum of it all. There's too much money to ignore. And the fact that somebody gets in is going to make it possible for money to affect it. It affects people who ref the game. It affects the people who seed the teams. The money, you can't get around it. And anybody who says that they're doing that, they're lying out their ass. It is about the money. And it's always going to be about the money.
Yeah. Just, you thought that after NIL that people would sort of, take the glass ceiling off in a sense. But like you said, now that the glass ceiling has basically been taken off of college and pro sports with the betting angle, I'm actually surprised that we haven't had a college scandal back in the day. Since the money has gotten so big. I mean, we all know of the point shaving stuff that went on back in the day. CCNY and Boston College and a few other schools. But now that I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now that you're going there, you said point shaving. I remember Arizona State.
Arizona State, right?
When they had a star basketball player, he shaved points. He was successful for a little while, and then he got greedy, of course, and the whole thing got spilled. The guy got locked out from the NBA. He didn't even get the chance to play in Europe or anywhere else. He was literally basketball Jones out of basketball altogether. He couldn't get any kind of run, and it's all because of the money.
Yeah. It's and back then you didn't have as many teams in this term. Actually, for you youngins out there, the NIT was actually the more prestigious tournament than the NCAA tournament was back in the day. It was more. It was they played they played the finals at Madison Square Garden, and teams would get a trip to New York. And back in the day, that was caveat. Now the NCAA did their thing, but it's crazy. The NIT, which they call now the not important tournament, was really that was the caveat. And now you have a lot of these little smaller ones now where where teams that just miss out on both of them are allowed to have a little bit of a postseason. But yeah, it's not something that's probably ever going to really end at this point in time right now. But the hypocrisy just keeps piling on and keeps piling on. You're watching and listening to Soul Tree. Go ahead, Mike.
Just hypothetical. Where do you think the next scandal will come from? Will it be because referees messed with the game, or will it be because players fucked with the game and got hooked up with gambling? Because that's basically what happened with Arizona State.
That's a tough call because see, the lament with NIL is that there's only going to be a handful of players that are really going to be able to make money. And there's going to, let's just say hypothetical for a college basketball team, you probably got, say, 15, maybe 20 kids on scholarship, and most of them were big men or big women on campus when they were in their high school days. And then when they get to Division I or even Division II, they have to make the not so much the physical adjustment, but the mental adjustment of I'm no longer that guy, or gal. So they're susceptible to that. And I don't know if you caught Dan Hurley's interview on 60 Minutes.
No,
he basically said that. Yeah, well, he basically said, no matter what happens to this year's UConn team, there are probably going to be about 4 or 5 guys that are going to skip town and jump on the transfer portal.
Oh yeah.
And see, to me, that opens it up for somebody who's not happy about their lack of playing time at What's the Matter You or whatever school, and they may be susceptible to somebody saying, hey, can you hit them up for a scandal or what have you. I always felt like it would be a ref, but let's face it, historically with college basketball, it's always been a player, and it's always been, for the most part, it's always been somewhat of a nondescript player. It's never really been, I guess. I know they tried their damnedest to get Spencer Haywood. That was one of the reasons why he was one of the original hardship guys.
I remember talking about that with Ricky on one of his shows. But
Mm-hmm.
you brought up a great point with the transfer portal. Next to NIL, the transfer portal is probably the second most important thing to happen to amateur sports. It's like the virtual version of the Homeboy Shopping Network. Anybody who gets screwed over by that coach, if they get politicked, they know that they can leave and go somewhere else. The size of the job pool is enormous. You're talking about somewhere around 20,000 players that think they can play, hoping that they can play on the next level. And a lot of it
that's just one sport, because you probably got just as many on the football side as well.
Exactly. And that's why the transfer portal can be an equalizer. No longer will we have the coaches who'll talk a lot of shit. You got to play this game my way, the way I want you to play. Otherwise, your black ass is out of here, or I'll put the screws to you, and your eligibility will be worth shit. No, players will get up and say, kiss my black ass, and they'll leave, and they'll go somewhere else. And maybe they'll catch it there, maybe they won't. But the bottom line is they'll have a chance to have a say when it goes on in their future. And that didn't happen before.
And again, I think that's the thing that bothers the quote unquote powers that be, is that now, to coin a phrase from a former and late NFL owner, the inmates are running the asylum in their eyes, because they're allowed, not now, they literally and figuratively have a way to dictate who they are. And let's be honest, the transfer portal has been there for years and years and years, but now the stakes have become a little higher. And like you said, there's an integration between the conference craziness and NIL, and the quote unquote traditionalists are having a problem with that. I still have no problem with the kids making money. It's not like, again, it's not like they're making, NFL free agency money. But the fact that there's going to be a disproportionate part of the wealth. But see, what they forget to tell you is, while you have individual player deals as well, their team and school deals well. That gets lost in the sauce. Now, let's be honest. The archery team is not going to get the same NIL deal as, say, the football or men's or women's basketball.
No. But I tell you what, they'll have a shot at the money, literally, not to be sarcastic. Look at what happened to Colorado. That tells you everything you need to know. They went from 0 wins 3 years ago to 3 wins to 4 wins to 9 wins. And all that was the transfer portal being used, finding help for their team, adding pieces. And that 3-year span was no different than a college kid leaving to go into the pros. In the pros, essentially, you have 3 years to make it. 1 year to learn the playbook, 1 year for application, and by the third year, you know what the fuck is going on, and you're going on with the flow and things. That's exactly what happened with Colorado, a few other schools, but the long and short of it is the money changed everything, and guys weren't no longer handicapped by the fact that they got stuck with lousy teams when they could get up and go somewhere else because their talents were asked for by the teams who saw them advertised on the Homeboy Shopping Network, otherwise known as the transfer portal.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy. But and yeah, I mean, again, it was a perfect storm with Dion coming there, being able to not only do the transfer portal but also be able to recruit. I
Yeah.
think that's gotten lost in a sense where because whether you think it's his star power or what have you, but the one constant, whether it's been Jackson State or whether it's been Colorado, is that he's been able to recruit, great athletes, whether it be his son, whether it be Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, going into this next season, they're going to be that now they're going to take a little bit of a drop off at quarterback, of course, because Shador is going to more than likely be a top pick, but they still have great players coming in. He's still, Dion is still able to recruit top recruits as well. So, we'll see how this plays out, immediately now with the basketball, with the NCAA tournament, both on the men's and the women's side. This is again the Soul Tree Radio and the Raw. I'm Anthony McLean along with Michael Lewis Ingram. We got about say 10 or so minutes left. Wanted to I know Mike, you wanted to talk about the NHL, and this past trading deadline saw a lot of interesting moves. Toronto basically have flexed and have trying to make a difference in the East, but clearly to me the most surprising and shocking trade was seeing everybody's little Lord Fauntleroy from Boston, Brad Marchand, get traded to the Florida Panthers, and now the defending Stanley Cup champions. And again, this was sort of like the Luka and AD trade where this came out of nowhere. But talk a little bit about that.
That Brad Marchand left the Boston Bruins to go to Florida was a head scratch for me. I mean, we know he's good because he's one of those guys you love to hate, but you hate him because he's as good as what he does on that. And the line that used to have him and Patrice Bergeron and who's the other guy on that line? Pasternak.
I think Pasternak, right?
Yeah, Pasternak. They were amazing.
Mm-hmm.
They were like jazz musicians, the way they flowed and scored as a line like they did. And now they're here in Florida. And I segue to the brothers because we've had Gold brothers in the playoffs and in the finals for the last 2-3 years now. And it's turned out that we no longer have like a Jerome McGinley type power forward scoring 40 and 50 goals a year. But what we do have are solid goal defensemen. And four of the best happen to be black. You got Darnell Nurse in Edmonton, who's a frontline defenseman there. You got Keandre Miller playing his heart out for the Rangers. You've got Seth Jones, who was part of a huge trade with Chicago that didn't work out, and now he's in Florida. And ironically, my favorite team, the Ding Ding Dallas Ding Ding Stars, with Matt Dumba playing defenseman. And I like Dumba because he's one of those classic guys who he looks more like a point guard. If we look at hockey as basketball on skates, he's a point guard setting everything up. And when the activity is like a rush, he will jump into the rush and act as an extra offensive player. And it's the kind of stuff that makes you appreciate hockey. And the fact that the brothers are doing it means that the flow has changed and the focus has changed because they're no longer the big scorers, but they handle the puck. and that's like handling the basketball on the hardwood. So the brothers are getting the notice, and if there's an offensive player who's playing well right now, it's the kid in Los Angeles, Quentin Byfield. He's one of the forwards there on the Kings, and he's a top 6 forward.
I caught them the other night against the Islanders, and our buddy Anthony Duclair is now with the Islanders. I don't think that. Unfortunately, I think the Islanders are going to be playing golf in another couple of weeks, but we'll see how that is. Piggyback to Florida. Are they still? Do you still look at them as now after the dust has cleared? Do we still look at them as the team to beat going into the playoffs?
Yes, we do. Bobrovsky is a bad summer gun in the playoffs. He just tightens up whatever he does during the regular season. He does it even better in the playoffs. They have a solid front line. They go 3 lines deep, and with Seth Jones in there now, they've solidified themselves again in the defensive core. I think I forget who the other defenseman is in that front pairing with him, but Seth was with his brother Caleb in Chicago, and they were supposed to be a pair for life in Chicago, and things just didn't go the way they wanted it to. They lost a lot of games. He wanted to go somewhere where he had a shot, and all of a sudden he's in Florida. So you got to realize defense does win championships, but in Canada, hockey, defense men win championships. And I got to add, as an added plus, the best Canadian goalie is an American, and he plays for the Winnipeg Jets, Connor Hellebuck. I've always been a fan of his game, and we're going to see him in the playoffs, and don't be surprised if Winnipeg makes a long run, if not get to the finals.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, now you mentioned Dallas, you mentioned Winnipeg. Gun to your head, who do you think? You think which one of them you think has the best chance of coming out of the West?
Well, I like Dallas. Edmonton has the same problem that other Canadian clubs have. They got this, but they don't have that. They were 2 lines deep in Edmonton a couple of years ago, but now they got 1 line. They got McDavid and Draisaitl and
Kane, and they've already ruled Kane out for the rest of the season. So that's a huge blow as well.
They lost that. Yeah, exactly. Calgary has Nazem Kadri, but he's not a real big scorer. Who else? The Canadians. Well, the Canadians have Suzuki and not much else. Unfortunately, Toronto is loaded. They got 9 forwards deep, but they don't get the same kind of production that you would think they'd get. Austin Matthews, Nylander, all these guys, they come up short in the playoffs, and Toronto is pissed over the fact that it's been many, many moons since they've seen themselves in the playoffs.
If they don't, depending on how far they go, do they blow this team up? Because it looks like Mitch Marner's probably not going to come back. He's already turned down. The contract extension. Looks like he's going to put himself out there. But do you, if Toronto doesn't, it's basically a winner, cup or bust in Toronto. But if they bust out again, do we see a Florida Marlins type fire sale down there?
Not quite Marlins sale, but it's going to be enough to make people shake their heads. They're going to break up at least 2 of those lines. So somebody's going to stay. It's either going to be Matthews or Nylander or Marner, but it won't be all 3 of them. Someone's definitely going to go. And as long as that's going to happen, everybody else in Canada is going to be shitting bricks because they really have nothing to match that. Calgary has a decent front line, but a lot of the players are kids and they're just starting to gel. Edmonton has 2 solid lines, but McDavid, even though he may seem the supposed best player in college in National Hockey League, he's got a short shelf life because Skinner's a good goaltender. He's not a great goaltender. Although if Hellebuck was Edmonton's goaltender, they'd have had a cup by
Oh,
now. He's truly
well,
very
yeah, that's a
quality.
whole, especially and especially in the cup playoffs. Notoriously, we've seen goalies literally carry their teams to Stanley Cup runs, and Winnipeg is one of those strong. Has the look of one of those teams where if Hellebuck, what's the old phrase, stands on his head,
Stands on his
they
head.
could go they could go very far. Yeah, they could go very far. But again,
They got
yeah,
Shifley.
it's going.
Yeah, they got
I'm
Shifley,
sorry.
Ehlers, Connor. They got a few people who can put the puck in the net. It's just that they always seem to have a power surge and power failure at the same time. We've seen it before. Teams with the President's Cup and run out of gas. I don't know who's going to run out of the gas, but somebody's due for it to happen. And then to the other side of things, some goalie comes out of nowhere or he plays way above his station and just becomes the it for them. That's what Skinner did last year. He was it for Edmonton, and he really played well, but it still wasn't enough. I don't know if Skinner is a Vezina Cup style goalie. He's not. The ones I think are Hellebuck, Ottinger in Dallas, and Bobrovsky in Florida.
Yeah, it's and this is what makes the Stanley Cup playoffs so exciting. It's even though it's top heavy for most of the conferences. There's always one team. There's always like a seventh or eighth seed that comes out of nowhere and
Mhm.
and messes up the whole thing. Was that you spent 6-7 months getting the best record, and then you lose home field within 3.5 hours,
Most of
and you have to whatever. Got just a couple more minutes here, Mike. Give me your final thoughts on the day.
Well, a couple of final thoughts. One that's not sports related has to do with the fact that some girl talked about how some guy at a mega church in Texas sexually molested her, and she finally came out and talked about it. His name was Robert Morris, and he's with a church down there. I forget the name of the churches, but it's a consistent thing that I've always believed in. The more pious a person is, the bigger the freak they are. And of course, the freaks always come out at night. And he got busted in the daylight, and now it's all come out. And we'll see what happens with that. But of course, I did not have sex with that young lady. So we know what they're going to say. And if God forgives him, well, how he forgives him, that's up to him and God. But I digress. Secondly, I want to give a special shout out to our brother Gary, who we know is fighting stuff right now. We want to give Gary some extra incentive to make sure he gets his black ass back here and being on station with us. We love you, G. Hang in there. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, I know he's watching. So same sentiment here, man. And I won't. I like what your Raiders are doing. I like what your Raiders are doing with Geno Smith. That's gonna be real interesting. My final thought really is, this again. This is that time of the year where I just truly love, where basically all four major sports are going on. Of course,
Oh, you're
you got where you've got yeah you've got now with the football, you got the free agency with the backdrop of the drafts coming up next month. Of course, baseball is going to be starting in another a week or so, and of course we've got both the men's and women's tournaments, and then of course the NBA and NHL coming in full swing. And one other thing for me is, I guess we have to start taking the Cleveland Cavs a little bit more seriously now. They're in the midst of a 15 their second 15 game win streak. They opened the season at 15-0.
not
They've
bad.
now won 15. They've won 15 straight. Excuse me. As of tonight, and they've done it in very very impressive ways. They went into Boston, thoroughly beat the defending champs. They've won in many different ways. The other night, 3 of their big players were out, including Mr. Mitchell, and they still wound up winning. So I've gone on record as saying I still think the Celtics are the team to beat, but maybe it may not be as easy of a ride as it was last year. Cleveland may have a lot to say as to whether the Celtics repeat or not. Now, being a Knicks fan, I have no problem seeing the Celtics suffer, but that's another conversation in and of itself. But yeah, I think we got to start giving some love to Cleveland and also I guess OKC as well. OKC.
It's nice. It's nice seeing both these clubs emerge. OKC wasn't expected to show up in any kind of fashion or form, and neither was Cleveland, in all honesty. But Donovan Mitchell really has opened up a lot of eyes over the past couple of years. His game is strong, and he's just starting to get noticed. I mean, insiders knew about him, but now everybody gets to see how good he is.
Absolutely, and yes, for our buddy Ricky, Pistons are now on schedule. I think most Piston fans have are basically looking at last year as a huge mulligan, but they are back. I mean, again, they're not title contenders, but they're this is what's happening this year is what we thought was going to happen last year when Monty Williams came in with the young team and what have you. They are playing well. They're looking at probably maybe a 7, possibly a 6 seed, depending on how excuse me, the rest of the season comes. But Detroit may be a year, possibly a year or so away from being a prominent team. I'm not saying they're ready to get back to the finals or anything to that effect, but they hit rock bottom last year. So now everything is on the up and up in Detroit, and it sort of bodes well with what's going on with their teams. We saw the Tigers make a little bit of a run in the baseball playoffs last year, and of course, the Putty Tats have been making their run in regard to the Super Bowl as well. So we'll see how that plays out. Mike,
if
go ahead.
It'll be gravy for them for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. This is if they get in. If they should get in, and they probably will. This is going to be a learning curve. You get that year where you can build on the run, but also make the playoffs. But again, you just keep, doing and it's not a quote unquote trust the process thing that blew up in Philly. This is more we're gonna get hammered. We're not gonna tank. We're gonna get hammered, but we're gonna build it. We're gonna build it the more traditional way. And it's paying off. It's paying off. I've had a couple chances to see them play this year. Nice little team. And again, like I said, this is what we thought they were going to be last year. But for whatever the basketball god said, huh?
Better late than never.
Yeah, exactly. Again, they hit about as rock bottom as you could last year, but now they're reaping the benefits of it. But Mike, again, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Want to thank everybody for joining us again this Thursday for another edition of Soul Free Radio in the Raw. Again, sending love out to our buddy G. Hope to see him back on here very, very soon. But again, for everyone watching, listening, what have you, thank you for joining us for another edition of Soul Tree Radio in the Raw. We will see you again, same bat time, same bat channel, next Thursday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Enjoy the rest of your evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are watching or listening to this, and enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, Mike.
Take care, guys. Good night.
All right, now.